Self-realization is the natural, innate state of the self. In truth, it should not be regarded as a state at all, for it is of the very nature of your very being. It is of the nature of consciousness itself. We speak of it as a state only in reference to the possibility that there could be an alternative, some other state, which then includes the supposition of some individual who could experience either or both of these states. For this reason, Sri Bhagavan said the egoless state is the only real state that there is, thereby revealing the reality that transcends alternatives and the very notion of a separate individuality or an ego entity. Of the self, he said, that is alone is real, that alone exists, thereby ruling out the possibility of two states existing and not existing, the possibility of that there could be anything other than the self existing at any time, and the idea that anything else could be real, even to the extent of an illusory appearance at any time. The undivided, ever same, perfectly full self, which is Brahman, alone exists, as it is, eternally. This is the perfect fullness. Realization of this is the highest bliss. And so every effort should be made in spiritual practice, in one's inquiry, in one's devotion, to realize this. The supreme devotion is that in which there is no longer any sense of I or mine, but only that which alone exists eternally. The fullness of inquiry, which is self-knowledge, is that in which there is no notion of I or mine, but only that, the self, that is to say Brahman, which alone exists eternally. Self-realization is declared by the scriptures to be the supreme attainment. Everywhere it is said, or the aspirant is urged, to attain liberation. It is indeed so. But how is one to attain the ever attained? If it is ever existent, how is one to attain it anew? The practice amounts to the elimination of the illusion of some other being other than the self, of some other state other than the state of the self. It is the destruction of the false sense of I and mine, the individual, and every definition appended to him, including every kind of misidentification, be it with the mind or the body or whatever, and every kind of attachment to anything in this unreal world. What you need, you have within you. The self is ever existent, and within you is the capacity for abidance in that as that itself. You need only use that which you have within you. How is it to be done? Inquire profoundly into the very nature of the inquirer. Who am I? Relinquish through knowledge the tendency to identify with whatever is objective. You cannot be an object, gross or subtle, a body or a thought. If you abandon the misidentification with anything objective, including the notion, the vague assumption of an ego entity called I, you will also abandon the delusive notion in the existence of anything that can be referred to as this. In an Upanishad it is declared that the state of bondage is characterized by I and mine, while liberation is characterized by an absence of I and mine. You need not bring about this absence. You need not bring about this absence. I and mine are already unreal. Your negation of them is the recognition of the fact. Similarly, the self is not attained anew. One does not, as the Maharshi says, make real or more real that which is already real. The self is already existent, always so. And you indeed are that self. If there appears to be some kind of differentiation between yourself and the self, someone who is I, who then has my thoughts, my experiences, my world, etc., inquire as to who is that I. If you find your nature in this way, the I-ness, being unreal, will vanish. What is ever existent remains, just as it always has been. But bondage has become impossible, and suffering has evaporated. One does not even remember how to suffer, or how to pretend to be bound. Practice intensely. Inquire deeply, thoroughly, profoundly. Devote yourself fully. And the highest good results. What else is that supreme state of knowledge but abidance as that? Being as being is, one without a second. What else is the supreme state of devotion other than abidance as that, in which there is no trace of the false assumption of an ego? In that, the truth is known. The self alone exists. The self alone is real. Its existence as itself is the only real state, the innate state. There is no other to do otherwise.